Hello everyone. My big computer is finally in a usable state, and so now we can start working on our actual projects again. Huzzah! I'm excited. So, for this one, we need to work on an enemy, because we can collect gold, we can collect keys, we can open doors, that's great, but let's fight our way through a horde of angry knights. So, instead of modeling a character for this one, we're going to get one from Mixamo. Mixamo? So for those of you that don't know about it, Mixamo.com has all kinds of free characters and animations. So I'm using this one just on the characters page. There he is. They rearranged it. There he is. Paladin J. Nordstrom. And so you'll come here, pick your character, whichever one you want. You want zombies, they got zombies. You want moose demons, they got moose demons. So you just select your character, download it, then switch over to the animation side, and you can search through all the animations they got. I'm not going to go through them all, it's a lot. 52 pages. One thing to keep in mind though is if you get, for instance, a walk animation, because of the way we're setting up the AI behaviors and stuff, this is not the kind of animation you want. You want to click this little button right here, in place. Bam. Because we're not going to do anything with root motion. Hips don't lie, but they don't count as a root either, so just make sure you click that little button. Boom. Alright, so I've got mine set up or mine downloaded already. So we'll go into our enemies folder. I'm going to create a new folder for mesh components. And one more that will be the animations. So double clicking the mesh components, the first one we need to import is the body, because this will come with all the skeletal information, so we want to import it as a skeletal mesh, and don't assign any skeleton, it'll just generate the one that it comes with. So import all that. Yes. None of that matters. So here is the mesh. Let's pull him out into the world and just kind of take a look at him real quick. Make sure the materials are right, everything's sizing is okay. Make sure you look all around your mesh underneath. See, we got some kind of... it's actually not... oh, yeah, it's got some see-through. In a low light environment, probably doesn't really matter, but I'm finicky, so I'm going to double click his material and I'm just going to set it to two-sided. It's just a quick little way of getting rid of that bleed. So now we can see it doesn't shine through. You mean mugging me, boy? Alright. Delete you. The mesh is a go. Let's go into the animations and then we'll import the rest of these. If you shift click, you can control click to deselect the one we don't need, because we don't need to re-import the body. So we want all the other animations. I have the breathing idle and the swagger walk for his unarmed state. And then I have a withdrawing sword state for when he transitions to combat movement. And then sword and shield idle, sword and shield walk, and then 2/ attacks. Now for this one you will want to assign the skeleton. So under skeleton we will find Paladin J. Nordstrom right there. And just import them all. And then we have a full list of animations to use. So we'll save selected and drop back into our enemies folder. Please don't crash. That'll wake you up. That'll put you on edge. Alright, so in our enemies folder, first thing we're going to need is an animation blueprint. This is basically like a character blueprint that'll carry out logic, but it'll assign animations based on that logic. So let's right click. We'll create, oh, no, actually, first thing we need is the blend space, because we need to put the animations together to go into our blueprint. So we'll click blend space, assign it to our skeleton. I think I said blend splice. This will be unarmed LOC. I use that, that's my abbreviation for locomotion. So underscore BS for blend space. Double click and open it up, and then we'll dock that up here. Now we don't really need the horizontal grid, but we will label it, because otherwise it will just pop up and say none, and it fries the inside of my brain. So we're going to set this up to say direction. The minimum axis value will be negative 180. Oh, not 180. Well, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I need to stop. It matters. So when you use a blend space, they used to have a blend space 1D and then a regular blend space. They've just replaced that with just a blend space. So the left and right axis is usually, or this direction, is usually used for handling strafing and things like that. But this character isn't going to be doing any of that. We will, however, want to click snap to grid, because otherwise it's all floating. The vertical axis, this is the one we use to handle speed. So we'll change that vertical axis name to speed. And then you'll see it, the changes are updated here, so we have speed and direction. And the maximum axis value, we just have walking animations, so we'll say 225 probably. And then we will snap to grid. So now we can take this breathing idle animation and dock it directly in the middle. This is a neutral direction, so just when they're walking directly straight forward, this is forward. So we'll set that there, and then we'll drag out a swagger walk. And now in order to kind of preview the blend between the animations, hold control on the keyboard, and then you can just basically move your mouse. So there's him idling, there's him walking. Alright. Now we got one blend space, we can go ahead and do the blueprint. So let's go under animation, animation, animation blueprint. We'll select his skeleton again, and this will be the enemy underscore NMBP. Double click and open that up. And then dock it, because for some reason it doesn't do that anymore for me. So inside this graph, which if you're not in this graph, if you're in this one, it's just right here. We'll right click and we'll add a state machine. This is something that helps handle the different logic to help you go from state to state. So you'd say you have an unarmed state and then an armed state. This will handle all the logic to get you from one to the other. But we're not going to just hook it. Oh. I guess you can rename it. I always just leave it like this, but that's probably a bad habit. Let's just, enemy states. That sounds like a war. Alright, let's do, enemy transitions. Alright. So from here we'll go slot, default slot, because we're going to be using animation montages to handle his combat. And this will allow us slot access to the anim slots inside the skeleton. So we'll plug that in like that, and that in right there. Now we go in here, and this is the entry point as soon as the animation bleep. Golly. Alright, as soon as the animation BP starts off, this is where it will go to. So we will add a state that we call our base. And this is the base building block that we will build off of. Drag out that blend space we made. Hey, I said it right. and we'll hook it to the output result. Now we need some variables for the direction and speed. I'm not actually going to worry about direction for the game, but I will show you how to get that calculated. So let's go into the event graph, and right here at the very beginning we are going to cast to our knight. So cast to the knight BP. We'll hook that right here, and then under this try get pawn owner, if for some reason yours doesn't have it, you can just try get pawn owner right there. Should automatically be here. We'll just hook that to the object. If you don't know how to do that, just box select everything you want straightened out and tap Q on the keyboard. Bam. Now, as knight BP, first thing I always do is promote it to a variable. And this will be just knight ref. Don't know that we'll actually need it from here, but it's always nice to have. Now, after we've casted and set our reference, we'll add a sequence node. Because the way the animation BP works is it's basically like an event tick. So it just constantly checks everything. And what is this one's? Event blueprint begin play. Executed when begin play is called on the owning component. Target is anim. Hey, maybe we can just set this up here instead of having to cast every single frame. See, I'm learning with y'all. This is why I like doing these videos. I learned a bunch of stuff too. So now we're going to do that. And it should do the same. So now we can just do a sequence here. And it's not casting every single... Come on, man, drag. Alright. So now, let's get our knight reference. And we will get velocity. So we do need that reference. Huzzah. And we'll get actor rotation. So velocity is your movement along one of the three axes available, the X, Y, or the Z. Is that the right axis? Yeah, X, Y, or Z. And the rotation is just the rotation of your character in the world. So we can combine these in order to get the direction. So from the rotation, we can see which way we're facing, calculate direction, and which way we're moving, and that'll say which direction our character is currently moving as for that blend space. So right here we can promote that to a variable called direction. Now we don't really need it because we're not using it here, but if you have a project that you need it for, there you go. Christmas came early. Alright, so get velocity, we're going to get the vector length. So basically what this does is it takes your starting point and then gets the so basically the way I view it, I don't know if this is actually mathematically accurate, but basically when you are pressing a button in order for your character to move, it kind of shoots a line out in front of you. Depending on how fast your character's moving is how long the line grows, so the acceleration and everything's taken into consideration. This measures that length and then tells it how fast it should go, essentially. But that's how you get the speed. You just get the vector length of the velocity. And then right there. And then you'll see he's now got some life to him. But don't forget, in our base state, we actually need to hook those variables where they go. Gonna put direction. Don't really need you, but you're here. Story of my life. I'm kidding. So now we have our enemy NMBP and should be updating. I am going to double check just to make sure that this works real quick. So inside our knight blueprint, I'm going to get rid of that cylinder. You've served us well. Goodbye. Under the mesh, I'm going to set it to the paladin. Now when you first spawn him in, he is going to be floating above where he should be. So we'll make sure our snap sizes are set and snapping is enabled, and I'm just gonna drop them down. Generally about -90 works, and then we gotta rotate them this way, because if you see this blue arrow, it's the forward direction of this character. Don't know why meshes are always imported facing off. You would think they would have it set up to where they at least face the right direction, but you know, I'm not gonna worry about it. So the capsule represents the actual enemy, and the mesh represents the visual representation. So what we'll actually be attacking is the capsule, so we want to make sure that it is somewhat close to the body, and the way we do that is we highlight the capsule component, and under the shape we can set the capsule radius, and I find that about 25, no, he's skinny today, let's do 20. Usually 25 works good. I like to put the lines right about shoulder so that when his arms are hanging down, they're about here. And then you generally, if you hit the arm, it's like right here anyway. Well, 25. Yeah, 25 works. You know, whatever works for your characters. Maybe you got a bigger guy, maybe you got a little guy, whatever. So, another thing to check is to make sure that the bottom of that capsule is about level with the feet, or just a little bit. I like the feet to go into the ground just a tiny bit, just to avoid any kind of floating, but that's too much. So a good way to measure where your mesh should be in relation to your capsule component is to highlight your capsule component and check its half height. So this is the half height. It starts from this center line. There is no center line, but it starts from about the middle and then measures up. Right? I think that's what that said. From center of capsule to the end of the top or bottom. Yeah. So it's at 88, and so our mesh needs to be at -88. And that usually lines it up. You might have to overshoot sometimes, like do like -89 or something. But yeah, that's got him right on the floor, right where I want him. We'll save everything real quick. Go back into the night, and you'll notice that he's not doing anything. He's T-posing, and that's because we haven't applied our animation blueprint. So with the mesh selected, anim class under animation mode, use blueprint. Anim class will set that. Oh, enemy. I was looking for night. And there he is. And then, yeah, with his arms hanging down, they're about right in line with that. That's usually where I aim. Personally, you know, personally. Alright, so now what we want him to do is actually be walking around. First and most important thing to make any AI walk around. And I always forget this until the last minute, but we're doing it first this time, darn it. Under the place actors, if you don't have this window, place actors, bam. We need a nav mesh, so typing in NAV gives us a navigational mesh bounds volume right there. And this will actually project a little green film onto the ground and tell the AI where it can walk and where it can't, because it'll register blocking volume. Let me just show you. So let's scale it up to fit the entirety of our level. What we got so far. Just what we got so far. We don't need to worry about what we don't have. And then boom. So let's do about 6,000 by 4,000, and that's fine. And then for the Z, I'll just do 500. And then if we tap P on the keyboard, you'll see, oh, there it goes. You'll see everywhere that it can register as a movement point is green. So these benches are blocking it off, so it knows, hey, I can't walk here. There's something already occupying that space. The table it's apparently telling him he can jump up on the table, but this ain't that kind of business, so we'll probably just move our nav mesh down a little bit. Maybe just 200. Drop it down. Drop it down. Alright, so we want the floor walkable, but not really anything else. Now, what we've noticed now is the door, while it's closed in its neutral position, seems to be a blocking volume. And yes, what that means is the AI will not be able to cross from this room to that room. But there is another little thing here in the nav menu called a nav link proxy. And what this does is it fixes that little issue for us. So we just drop one right here, and you'll see it spawns these two little cylinders. This is designed for navigational mesh gaps. So you want to make sure one point is in the green, and then the other point is in the green of the other one that you want to connect. And this will let your AI be able to go to a certain point, and like let's say you're on a ledge and you have that thing set up, it'll actually be able to jump off instead of having to run all the way back down. Or in this case, it'll actually be able to walk through a door. Now sometimes they are just a touch quirky. So we're going to make sure, real quick, let's save everything. Let's go into our night. And we're going to do an event begin play. We're going to set an AI move to. I like to use the move to and not move location or actor, personally, just because it lets you have different things happen based on that. For the pawn, it is the self-reference, because this is the pawn that we want to be moving around. And the target actor, for now, is just going to be the player character. And we'll move him way over here so he has time. So we have time to open that door before he gets to it. Now he is going to move pretty quick, but in the night blueprint under the character movement, I'm going to set his max walk speed to the 225. So now when I jump in, I should be able to make it to that door and open it. Here he comes. 225, still way too quick. And yeah, he's walking through the door. You saw a little bit of a quirk, was it follows. Access none, trying to read. Alright, access none. Alright, so this doesn't work very well. Well, darn. Alright, let's just do it this way then. So we'll just drop this into place right here. Just like that. Compile. Play one more time. Jump out. And no more error. Alright, so it has to be set up like that. Darn. That would have been cool. Alright, but we don't want him to just automatically take off directly to our player. We want him to be unaware. Let him be just chilling, minding his own business, right? Just hanging out in a dungeon. So what we can do is, instead of on AI move to, well, we will use that, but I'm going to just delete this for now. And I'm going to delete this for now. So on begin play, we're just going to create a custom event called roam. Now we're not going to worry about behavior trees and all that, because this is very simple AI, so it'll be everything we need to do we can do right here. So we're going to set up a few states, or logical states, for our AI. So the first one is he's just walking around doing his own thing. So this is what I usually call roam. It's when they just kind of pick a point, walk to it, wait a little bit, pick another point, walk to it, wait, etc. So the way we'll do this is on begin play, we will get actor location, promote this to a variable that will be called start point. And on roam, we are going to do an AI move to. The pawn will again be self. And now the target destination, we're not going to plug one in directly. We will do a random reachable point in radius. So what this does is you put in an origin on the map, and then it creates a circle around it, and it'll pick a spot in there. So the origin will be the start point, or where the character started at, and the radius will be, these are in the regular Unreal units, so the way you can kind of tell how far, if we go into top orthographic and unlit mode, I think it's control. How is it? Is it alt? Uh-oh, what did I just move? There's a way that you can actually measure. Oh, it's middle mouse button. Alright, middle mouse button clicked, and you can actually measure, and that's how many units. So for instance, this one square of the floor is 1,000 units. So if we want them to be able to, okay, if we want them to be able to do both of these, we would probably put them in the middle and then say you got 2,000 unit radius. Of course, that will also let him pick something way over here, and if it's available, he'll end up walking all the way over here. I generally like to keep them just within a set radius, so since this is 1,000 across, and they're square, so it's 1,000 across, I'm going to put them directly in the middle, and then say he's got 500 feet, 500 radius that he can work with. Compile that. Now on the AI move to, once he gets there, I want him to kind of wait for a little bit, but I don't want him to wait the same amount of time every time. So for the duration, I'm going to get a random float in range. And this will let you pick a minimum amount of time and a maximum amount. So he always waits at least 1 second, but will not wait more than 3 seconds. Something like that. That way there's a little variation. That way if you have a bunch of enemies, they're not all just moving all at the same time. And now after that delay, I want to do a branch. Because since we're going to be able to kill this guy, we don't want his corpse floating around on the ground, terrifying children. So we're going to add a variable of a boolean, little b, capital D. Is he dead? B, dead. Do you be dead? And we'll hook that to the conditional return, or the conditional input, yeah. And if false, then we are going to resume roaming. If true, then we're going to probably do nothing, you know, like most dead people do. So we'll jump in. I'm going to go back into perspective, and I'm just going to click these 3 little dots. This changes the preview mode that we're doing, and I'm going to go into simulate. It's like, why aren't you moving? Probably helps to call the roam event. So on begin play, we'll call roam. Alright, we'll click that. There he goes. He's walking. He's walking fast. I should. There he goes. He always starts right there at that point, and he'll pick a spot. I used to get their updated location and then move it, but I noticed that enemies tended to migrate. They'd all cluster into one area. So I like doing it this way because then they always kind of stay hovering around where their origin point was. Alright, but he moves too fast. So instead of 225, let's do 125. And see how that... Oh, that's much better. Yeah. Strutting your stuff all along the catwalk. Alright, so we can add a few of these now. So I'll just... Oh, I'm going to move him roughly to the center of that square. You don't have to put him in exactly the middle. It's just I'm that kind of person, I guess. I'm just going to scatter a few of them. So we got, let's see. This is a pretty big room, but 2 for here. When you're kind of balancing your combat and stuff, when you first start putting enemies in, I would say you want kind of an introductory combat encounter. So while the player might be able to handle 5, 6, 7 enemies, to start with, it's good to put a lower amount. That way you kind of get them used to the mechanics and such. Kind of a little brush up, because you will know exactly how to do this, but you also got to kind of think from the player's perspective. They're jumping into a game they might not know anything about. So you want like just a little introduction zone. I don't know why I'm jumping in like I'm going to fight them. They can't even take damage right now. I would be mauled. Let's save. Well, by that token, they can't do damage either, so I guess we're good. Alright, so now in the night, under the viewport, we're going to add a component, and we want a pawn sensing component. And then you'll see he's got this big green sphere around him. What the green represents is vision, and what the yellow represents is hearing. And the blue does something else. I don't know. I only ever really worry about sight and sometimes hearing. I don't want him to be able to see 5,000 units because that's covering the whole map. So we're going to do about, let's see, 1,200. And I don't want him to be able to see directly out the sides. So for the peripheral vision angle, I'm going to set it to something like 80. Seems a bit more realistic. Oh, I don't know. He got helmet on. Maybe something like that. So yeah, we'll just do 60. Compile that. Save everything. Am I recording? Yes. Alright. So now we'll go into the event graph with our pawn sensing component selected, and on C pawn we'll click this little plus sign that will give us an event, and we're just going to print string. Now I don't want to print the string every time he sees pawn, only sense players. Okay, then in that case, yes I do. We'll just do that there. And he shouldn't see me, probably not facing my direction. $12.50 may be too little. Maybe 2,000 after all. So let's do 2,000 units, because basically as soon as you open that door it'd be like, hey, you're not supposed to be in here. So let's right there. Hello, hello, hello. Yeah, alright. So they're seeing me. So now what we want to do is basically we want to say, hey, there's a target over there, let me go get them. So on C pawn, we will promote that pawn object to a target. Actually, we don't want it to do it every time, so I'm going to get my target reference, right click, and convert it to a validated get. And if it is not valid, then I set it to the pawn that was just seen. You don't want to set it to this. It'll just set it as an invalid reference. And if it is valid, we'll just bypass this and go into the next. So the next event is a custom event, chase player. And if it is valid, then we just continue to chase player. Oh wait, let's add a boolean. Be chasing player. And we'll get that right here and add a branch. That way it doesn't, if our character's in the middle, or our enemy's in the middle of an attack animation and then he registers a sight, we don't want it to cancel that out and then cause him to jump around. So is he chasing player? If true, don't do anything. If false, then we will set chasing player to true. And then call our chase player function. But this will cause an issue because we don't want him to be able to do this while he's dead. So if chasing player is false, let's see. Let's do one more branch check here. And we'll see if dead is false. Because once he's killed and it's set to true, we don't want him to do this again. I usually try to stack booleans with an or an and a not and all that, but sometimes it's easier just to double stack them like that. Double stack the branches. So for chase player, well, right here, we'll do the opposite. We'll do one more and see if they're chasing player, and if false, then we'll do this. But if true, we want this loop to be canceled so that this loop can continue, because chase player should be called right here. So for the chase player, we're going to do an AI move to, plug that in. The pawn is a self-reference to the knight blueprint, and the target actor is our target pawn. Now for the acceptance radius, this is just 5 units, it's usually way too close. Let's try 100. And on success, we will print a string that says, I'm in attack range now. And on fail, some kind of error has happened, we'll just do 404. Target not found. Then at the end, we'll just hook them both with a delay. And just call the chase player one more time. Save everything real quick. Yeah, oh, he's after me. Let's check the error first. Well, he's just gonna keep on trying. Maybe we should make it to where they can open a door. Alright, let's see. I'm in attack range now. I'm in attack range now. They're doing it very quickly. But that's good. They're doing what we want them to do. So we don't really need to worry about the on fail. They shouldn't ever fail. Basically on fail is like if your character teleports up to something, or if like on a lid or something out of range. But since our floor plan is pretty open, we can pretty much worry about this. So once they're in attack range, we want them to actually fire off an attack animation. And in order to do that, we're going to take advantage of that slot component thing we set up. So inside the animations, I'm going to find my 2 slash animations. These are the 2 I got. I got the one that looks like this and the one that looks like this. I like these 2 because they return right back to where they start from. So it makes it really handy. So sword and shield /4, we'll right click, create. We want to create an anim montage, and this will be knight _ attack 1. The reason I included knight is because if you have a bunch of different characters that are all using montages, it won't filter based on the blueprint you're in. So it's good to get in the idea of labeling the animation itself so that when you go into your character to apply animation montages, then you can filter by the name of it. Let's see, that was attack. That one, so we'll do this one the same way. Create anim montage, knight _ attack 2. Now we'll go into the knight blueprint, and on success, once he has reached the player, we're going to play montage. Is it this one or this one or this? Let's see. Yeah. So it's the one with the little white thing on top. I like this one because it has a bunch of different blend out options versus the other one. This play anim montage that has nothing. So on success, the enemy has successfully reached the player. We'll hook that here under mesh. We'll hook that to the in-skeletal mesh component, and then the montage to play has only room for 1, but we have 2. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a select. And this is how we can make it to where it'll just pick a random one, because we will do random int in range to get a random integer in range. We have 2, and this is essentially creating an array of attack animations. Actually, you know what? That probably, well, let's go over this method and then I'll show you the other method. So this is how you can create an array of selectable options, but you need a wildcard to choose. So we plug this in. Since it's an array, it starts at 0, so we start at 0, max is 1, and then it'll always get a random integer of either 0 or 1, and then there. But what might be better is if we create a variable called attack montages. We make this an anim montage object reference, and then over here in the details panel under variable type, we can change it to be an array. Compile real quick, and then we can add some elements to it with this little plus icon, and then we can just set our attack animations just like that. Now to get it applied here, we'll drag out that array, get it, and we'll just do a random array item and plug that in. That's probably the easier way of doing it, honestly. And then on completed, we want to do a short delay, kind of similar to last time where we do a random float in range, but I don't want it to be too terribly long, so I'm going to say 0.25 to 1, 0.75. Might not seem like much of a difference, like a quarter of a second, but in gameplay, it can really affect the feel of it. So that ought to be good. Now let's take a look. Probably gonna dance funny. Oh, he's not dancing. He's attacking. Yeah, and he's alternating. 100 units might be a little close. So let's try 150. Alright. Hi. 150 is kind of close. If 150 is good. Now we have another problem to solve. He's not facing my character when he attacks. So, the way we fix this is we're going to create another custom event called face player. And then when he starts his animation montage, we will call that, so we'll call face player, and then once it's finished, then he will be done with it. So when we're facing the player, we basically want to tell the enemy blueprint to face in a certain direction. So we're going to get, let's just use our target, convert that to a validated get just as a precaution. I mean, if they're moving to and attacking it, it should be valid, but it's always good to, you know, trust but verify. So we're going to get our actor location of the knight blueprint, and then from our target we'll get that actor location, and then we're going to set actor rotation. Now the rotation of the actor we're setting is for the self, for this knight blueprint, and for the rotation we're going to find look at rotation. So this takes in 2 points and then calculates the direction that needs to be faced. But we don't want to hook that up just like that. So the start point is our enemy start point, where they are in the world, and the target is the target's location. So the reason we don't want to just hook it directly like this is because then it takes in the X and Y coordinates, and it will actually make the enemy rotate up and down instead of just around. So we'll right click, split, right click, split, and then we'll just hook up the Z axis so that it's only rotating like a top basically. And then for the face player, set actor rotation, then we're going to need a delay. We're going to make it a very short one, so I'm going to say 0.01. Then we're going to add a branch with a B and a left click. And for the condition, we want to get our mesh, get the anim instance. This gets the animation instance that your character is currently under. And we want to see, is any montage playing? So is the montage still playing that we're using for our attacks? And if true, then we're going to call our face player again. Because we're still trying to hit him, we want to rotate to him. And once the animation is done, then it'll automatically stop the rotating. I keep doing that. Let me just throw a knight down right here. Of course you're gonna walk away. Hey buddy. So he rotates to face us and stops after his attack is done. So that's good. That's what we want. Bam. Yeah. Alright. But we don't want him to be walking around just like that. We want him, when he sees the player, to actually draw a sword. So we'll do another custom event called ready weapon. He doesn't have the weapons just yet, but that's easy to get. And then once he sees the player and is not dead, then we call that ready weapon. And then we'll hook the rest of this up to the end of this. So when they ready weapon, we will stop movement immediately. Stop all movement. We're going to play a montage. I just said play montage. The white one right there. I'm going to drag all this over a little bit. Skeletal mesh will be our mesh right here. The montage to play we haven't actually set up just yet, but it's going to be this withdrawing sword. So let's right click, create and a montage, knight underscore draw sword. And then we'll just plug that in right there. The reason the little arrow worked for me is because I had it still selected in my content browser when I came in here. If it doesn't pop up, you can just click the drop down. Stop active movement. On completed, that's when we'll hook up. Oh, come on now. There we go. On completed, we'll hook up these two right there. Actually, let's rearrange this just a little bit because it might register multiple times. So we're going to move this chasing player boolean back over right before we ready the weapon. That way, just to make sure this is only called once, because we're using that as a conditional check, we want to make sure that this line doesn't get continuously fired. So now when he sees me, he draws his sword and then he'll start moving towards me. But he's still in that regular animation phase. What we'll do is right here, once he's drawing that sword animation, we're going to add another boolean called, oh actually, we can just use that chasing player. So let's delete that one. But let's go into our animation blueprint for our enemy. And right at the knight reference, we'll get chasing player, that boolean we have set up. And then we'll right click and promote that to a variable. It should automatically be named chasing player. So right there. Move this in line. If you don't like the lines hooked like this, like I have an aversion to, I'm just going to do that. And then what we're going to use this boolean for is we're going to create an armed state. So base will go to add state, and this is our armed state. So the reason you use states for some things and montages for another is montages are things like actions. Like if you're picking something up, you just want to play a montage real quick. You don't want to change the entire state of your character. Whereas if you're in an going to an armed state like we're about to do, you want to transition his entire animation frame from his walking around with swagger, because it's called swagger walk, to actually walking around with a sword and shield and stuff like that. Oh, and we haven't set that one up yet. So let's go create our animation blend space. You can either right click animation blend space, or you can do what I'm going to do, and I'm just going to duplicate the unarmed, and this will be my armed Luke underscore BS. Double clicking and open that up, and I'm just going to delete. Let's see, there is sword and shield walk, and sword and shield idle right there. So this is his new state, the armed. So we'll save everything real quick. Go back into the animation blueprint, double click and open that up. Drag out our armed blend space, hook that up, drop in the two variables we set up the first time. compile, get an error, go back to enemy transitions, double click what this is called a transition rule, and this is how you determine, hey, we're going from this state to this state because this happened. Base to armed will never be taken. Please connect something to can enter transition. And this is why we needed that bool. So we'll open that up and we'll just take that boolean and plug it in right there. So now when we jump in the game, he sees me. He's walking over, looks like he's even holding a sword. Ha! How about you? Alright. So now he's got that going. He's got that going for him. So now we can actually spawn a sword and shield on him. We're just going to use the player's sword and shield for now. So we want to go into the night blueprint, find the mesh, double click over here on the skeletal mesh asset, and it will open up this window. This is his skeleton tree. So our enemy is right-handed, so he'll hold the sword with his right hand. So let's find his right hand. Right click, we're going to add a socket, and this is how you can attach things to different areas of your mesh. You just add a socket and then you add an item to that socket. So this will be the weapon socket, and let's right click and add a preview asset of our sword. That's a big old sword for him. But we'll hang that like that. Now, if it's hard to figure out where you want this thing to be because he's in a T-pose, what we can do is go into the preview scene settings over here on the right, which if you don't have should be, yeah, right here, just under window. If you don't have a window that's available, generally you can find it under this window tab. And under animation blueprint for the preview animation thing, oh no, it's the preview controller. We want to use a specific animation. And this will let you use whatever. So I'm going to use my sword and shield idle. I'm going to pause it real quick, set it to just right over here. And then now I can kind of position it where I want based on where he'd actually be holding it. Although it's massive, so let's scale it down. You can actually scale sockets instead of having to scale the actual meshes. And the way blades usually work is it'll be pointed basically towards the knuckle, kind of like that. But because it has a weight to it, we'll also be tilting it forward a little bit, dragging it back and dragging it down. Although it's a little small now. Wrong way. There we go. I don't think it changed, but I'm not gonna worry about it. And now we can do the same thing for the shield. So let's go find his left hand, and we'll add the socket. Click the socket. You can double click it, or hit F2 on the keyboard, and this is the shield socket. Now I'm going to add preview asset, shield, and then just like last time, just kind of position it where we would want it. Well, the player won't see this. Oh, at that point, what's even the point of the shield? This is what the player will see, so this is all that really matters. So let's just do that, and move it back that way a little bit. And it's okay if it looks kind of funny on this side, because it'll always be facing the player like this usually, and they're not going to be too focused on how his hand looks in the actual shield. You can kind of, like, I don't advise cutting corners, but I mean it works sometimes. I've seen a bunch of games where it doesn't even have any attachment, it just floats, so no worries here. But now we have a sword and shield socket, and the good thing is when we spawn anything on those sockets, it'll take into account the socket size and automatically adjust. So we'll save real quick. Go into our knight blueprint. Go into our knight blueprint. We're going to create a new function to actually spawn swords and shields. So the new functions will be spawn gear. And then when we spawn gear, basically our enemy has gone into his withdrawing sword animation, and we're going to spawn actor from class. Now this one's going to be the sword, so we will select sword. How are we doing the character's weapons? Oh, it's just a sword. Okay. Well, let's just, in the enemies class, we'll just create a new folder called gear. Double click it, open it up, and we'll create a new blueprint class of an actor. This one will be sword_BP. And then we'll duplicate that and call it shield_BP. So for the sword, we're just going to add a static mesh called weapon, and it will be the sword. Compile that, and then for the shield we'll do the same thing. Come on, buddy. There we go. Open full blueprint. We will add a static mesh called shield, and it will just be that shield. Compile, save everything, bam, right into the knight blueprint. So for the spawn actor, this one's going to be the sword, so let's get the sword BP. And for the spawn transform, let's grab our mesh, and we'll get socket transform. This way you can textually reference any socket inside the mesh and get the actual world location of it. So for the in socket name, this one is the weapon socket, and we'll plug that in right there. Transform space, I don't remember. I think it has to be RTS actor, but if it, well, we'll take a look. I'm going to leave it as world for now, and we'll see how that goes. So once we spawn that, we want to right click, promote that to a variable called sword ref, and then we are going to attach actor to component. So this will attach the actor that we just spawned to our character's mesh component as the parent, and the socket name will be weapon socket. For the location, we will snap to target, snap to target, snap to target, so that it takes all of the socket into consideration, and boom, because right over here is just getting the socket transform to tell it where to spawn. This will make it attached to it. And just to make sure that that's working before we move on any further, let's go set up the actual functionality for this. So on knight draw sword, we're going to add a notify to this. So I'm going to open that montage, and right about here under notifies on the one, I'm going to right click, add notify, montage notify. Now you can name this if you want to, if you click it and add a notify name. This comes in handy when you have multiple notifies. You can name each one different things and then do a switch on name of notify and change it. Just using the one, I'm not going to worry about it. So inside here, on notify begin, since there's only the one, I'm going to call my spawn gear function. Oh, but for the sword, I am going to go in and turn the collision off so that it doesn't start knocking around the enemy. There he goes. So now I can do the same with the shield. And then we're going to spawn actor from class. The class will be our shield. We'll get the socket transform. Of our shield socket and plug that transform in here. Promote this to a variable called shield ref. Attach actor to component just like last time. Plug in our mesh. Tell it to attach to the shield socket. And then snap to target, snap to target, snap to target. Alright, so let's save everything. Oh, and in the shield, under the static mesh properties, we're also going to turn that collision off, because it'll cause some funky physics issues. It'll cause your enemies to just fly around the room. Oh, you want some meat? Oh, ha ha ha. Alright. So we need to set up. Let me just check something real quick, see how I'm doing this object. I just got interact. Alright, let's go into the player blueprint. Player, right here. And see what our attack by channel. Oh, by channel, just visibility. Alright, so the reason our enemy hit isn't referencing is the night BP under the mesh. Let's go to the collision presets under collision. We'll change it to custom. And I want it to block visibility. Block or overlap, either one. You just want it to register visibility channel. So now it should turn green when I strike him. Hey buddy. Hey buddy. There you go. Now we need our enemy to actually take and deal damage. So we're going to create another function. Just like for our player, this is going to be the attack trace. But this is going to be going in the opposite direction, so it'll start at the enemy and then move towards the player. So for the attack trace, we're going to do a sphere trace. And this time we're going to do a sphere trace for objects. This comes in handy when you're looking for specific things. The reason we're doing visibility is because the player, you might have it set up to where your player can break boxes or something. You want to be able to, anything that's visible, you can just smack it, right? But for enemies, you would really only want them to either attack each other or attack the player, basically. So this is where objects come in handy. So for the object types, we're going to make an array. And we're just going to look for pawns. For the start, we're going to get actor location. And for the end, we're going to get direction to get unit direction. So we're going to go from this one to our target. So we'll get actor location here. And then we're going to multiply this by how many units in that direction we want it to go. So let's right click. We can convert this to a float. I'm gonna say, let's see, he's 150 units away, so let's say 180. I don't think we can hook directly. So let's take our actor location and we'll do a plus, and we'll add this to it for our end. So we're taking the location of the enemy, and then we're moving forward an amount to go. Crap. Okay, so we're gonna go forward 180 units, and that will be the end. Let's add a 20 unit radius. Draw debug type. We'll go for duration. Compile. Let's save. We need a way to call that real quick. Let's go into the night BP. Under event graph. Where's the attack? Attack. So let's go to our attack montages. We're going to double click and open both of them because we need to add another anim notify. So right about here is an attack range. So let's right click, add notify, montage notify. We'll do the same thing in the other attack. Right about where it looks like it would connect with the player is where you want it to deal damage. So let's right click, add notify, montage notify. And then inside the night BP, oh, actually right there, right here where it's playing, on notify begin, we'll call our attack trace. So I did set it up to be visible for a duration, so let's check. Oh, don't be shy now, come on. Yeah, and it's turning green, and it's calling at the right time, and it's moving forward. I can dodge it. Bam. Alright. Good deal. So once it connects, let's go into our attack trace. On our out hit, we're going to break the hit result. B left click to add a branch. And if it hits, then we want to apply damage. So we're going to get the hit actor and check to see if it is valid. The one with the question mark. So if it's a blocking hit and it's valid, then we want to apply damage. Now for this simple game, we're just going to do, because there's no leveling and no anything like that, so we're going to see what is our character's health. 100. So let's do 5 or 10, whichever. I'm just going to do 5 for now. And then once they're valid, they'll apply damage of 5. So inside our player, let's go into the event graph. Let's do event any damage. Oh, we have an event any damage. Oh, weird. Okay. Wow. There we go. Well, if that's the case, let's make sure he's actually killing us. And we're going to say do 50 damage a hit. Because then it should only take 2 strikes and then the level resets. Might need to adjust his sight radius. Yeah. Good deal. Oh, and now let's check just one more thing to make sure. Come on. I should be able to block and it not take any damage. It's registering green. That was 2. Yeah, cool. Alright, so my block is still working. Let's take a look. And just to finish up, let's do some tidying. So we're going to say, we're going to box select the beginning event, hit C on the keyboard to go into comment, and this is going to be our begin play. This is our roam function, so we'll take all this, move it up, comment it out as roaming. Comment sees pawn. See, this is our chasing player. So comment as chase and attack. Because this one is right there, goes with it, I'm gonna box like this. Face. Target when attacking. And I'm going to set this one's comment color, so you can adjust the way it looks over here on the right with the comment color. This one I'm going to make a kind of a reddish, just because I'm going to actually set it inside this one. That way I know that these two functions go together. And right here, this is the spawning gear, so we'll just comment it out as spawning gear. Alright, compile that, save everything. Pick up key, pick up gold. Okay. Alright, so now we've got our enemy in. He's walking around and he'll chase the player and attack. In the next one, we'll start making our enemy take damage and then handle his death animation. So we will need one more animation. It's the Knight and Shield Death. Or Knight and Sword Deaths. But that's it for this one. I will see y'all soon, and I do apologize for the delay. I had some issues come up. But what else is new, right? See y'all.